So coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, cancel culture. What is it? What makes it distinct from, say, regular old accountability? And should Christians partake in this I don't know, attitude? We'll get into it, so keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
Well, I'm a loudmouth. I'm out in the town, talking to Christians about Christian stuff, and people overhear it and they want to fight about it.
You have to code
Yeah.
a really small hole in the box. That's what I hear for Britney Spears. So, I mean,
ouch.
Yikes.
Poor JT.
Good thing you can dance.
Poor little fella.
Matt, you ignorant slut.
As the recording, we're a little bit late this week, but that's okay. So it's a Wednesday. It's a little chaotic at the Bibbs house right now, but I think we can get through this podcast. And my day job is in the middle of a Marine exercise, so there's lots of stuff going on. I'll probably have work to do right after we wrap here. Oof. And I got to get up at like 4 a.m. tomorrow. It'll be fun. It'll be great. But lucky I'm on the West Coast, so it's not so late yet. So I feel good. Anybody watching right now, you can get at me at Instagram, Super Dre, and Instagram. And Brian, what's up, man?
Hey, Dre. Yeah, I'm cranky just hearing getting up at 4 a.m. Like I'm triggered by that.
Well, I reached my old man life. I wake up at 4 a.m. for no reason. On Saturdays, I sleep in until like 6:30.
I don't think I think that's called incontinence, why you wake up early.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. You taught me something. Brian, how was the week that was?
It's pretty chill. Nothing exciting to report. I feel like I should make stuff up because it's just not very entertaining for the listener when I don't have anything going on to report.
It leaves you shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
I think that is the excitement.
Yeah. I had a lot of really exciting stuff go on, but it's too cool to talk about.
I understand. You don't want to show off.
I'm very mysterious.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. Matt, it's up to you, man.
So this weekend, my son and I cut trees down. So my birthday was Saturday. I went hunting again on Saturday, took my daughter hunting. And then on Saturday, and then on Sunday, my son and I cut trees down. I'm giving like vibes of like super outdoorsman, which is really funny because it's not the case. We live in the city. We have a tree in the front yard. It's an older, mature Bradford pear. It's a male tree, which means it doesn't drop fruit, but we hate it and it looks like crap. And we had a weird out of season freeze last year, and we had an ice storm happen before the leaves came off of the trees, and a bunch of the trees got shredded from it, and ours was one of them. So like half of it was destroyed, so it looked janky. So we cut that down and then cut one down in my backyard, and that one was really just about not having leaves in my pool. So that was my weekend, hunting and cutting down trees. So I'm like some kind of Paul Bunyan mountain man thing going on. And then, just work and this guitar this one right here over my shoulder, I swapped out the pickup in it. So I did some electrical work. I was soldering and cutting and grinding and doing all sorts of other stuff. So, you
just picked that up on the side? Like,
yeah. Well, so when I started playing guitar, which I started about 5 years ago, which is to say that I'm still terrible at it. I'm kind of I'm into like fiddling with stuff, right? So like I'm taking lessons from this guy, and he's young, and he doesn't ever work on his own guitar, so he has to take him into like shops to have him worked on luthiers and whatnot. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, bro, it's just like 6 wires and a chunk of wood. Like, just get in there and do it yourself. And he's like, mm-mm. So I start buying parts and I'm swapping pickups and changing potentiometers. And he's like, you can do all that? And I'm like, it's just soldering little bitty wires. Like, it ain't hard. And if you screw it up, you rip all the wires out and start over again. Like, there's only so much that can go wrong. I rebuild cars. Like, that's a whole lot more dangerous and harder than this. So yeah, and it freaks Carrie out because I'm in there with like a power drill and a guitar. And she's like, should you be drilling on this? And I'm like, kind of have to.
Have you played it since you did
Mhm.
that?
Oh yeah, no, it works. I played it for about 10 minutes because that was like in the middle of the day. But yeah, I tested it, made sure it all worked before I put it together. Because when you're wiring guitars, the pickups are magnetic. So if you plug it in and just tap on it with a piece of metal, it'll make a loud popping noise. So then you know it's getting power and it's grounded. So then you just put it all back together and then you restring it and tune it and wrote a song about it. Want to hear it? Here it goes.
Right
So
on.
that's what
right
I've been
on.
doing. So yeah, I mean,
I seriously thought you were about to start singing just now.
That's kind of a joke. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I
Little
thought like,
throwback to In Living Color.
Huh.
You remember the variety show from the 90s?
yeah, that was when Jim Carrey used to be funny.
Yep. Yeah, the whole skit, that was his punchline. It's like, I wrote a song about it. Want to hear it? Here it goes. And he wouldn't wait until they said no. Then he'd strum a song and he would say like a sentence. He would
okay.
sing song a sentence.
It's coming back.
I restrung my guitar this weekend. And then he'd start talking again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my
All right.
story. So what are we talking about, boys? I know I was going to bring something up, I guess. So there was a situation that happened this weekend. The Washington Commanders, for those that aren't keeping up with the NFL, that is the team that used to be called the Redskins.
The National Football League.
But first of all, was renamed because of racial sensitivity concerns, right? Never mind the fact that the logo was drawn by tribe members and was like paid for and blessed by a local tribe of Native Americans. But the Redskins name was considered to be derogatory. So Dan Snyder, the owner, pushed back for a long time. He finally gave in. They changed the name. They went for a year as simply the Washington football team because they couldn't figure out a name, and now they're the Commanders. So anyway, they have a
They should have
player.
just changed the logo to a potato, which is my favorite when I'm mashing them up. The Redskins. That's
Redskin
the
potatoes.
ones. Yeah. Those are my jam.
But I like them simply because I'm lazy and you can leave the skin on because it's tasty, right? You just mash the skin and.
Hello, I'm right with you.
You're right with me, yeah.
Right with you.
I wrote a song about it. Want to hear it? Here it goes. So there's a defensive player, Kendall Fuller, and I know nothing about Kendall Fuller except I now like the guy. The NFL's been doing this thing where players can wear personally designed cleats. And the idea is that they can use these shoes as ways to show a little personality and talk about causes that are important to them. So, everything from domestic violence, cancer awareness, all these different things these guys are wearing. So
my cause, my cleats is
that what it's called? Okay,
yeah.
There you go. So Kendall was wearing shoes that had the FCA logo. So for those that don't know, that's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which is a school club at the high school level. And I don't know if it exists at the collegiate level. It might. I have no idea because I didn't play college sports. But it's if everybody remembers back to when you were in high school and there were clubs, right? You had like Spanish club and Latin club and debate club and all of that. FCA was one of these clubs. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Christian leadership for athletes as a way to kind of tie athleticism and Christianity and just the mentality of what's going on with the students and whatnot. And this young man felt that was an important cause to represent, and he has been called out for wearing quote anti-LGBTQ
I know it
cleats.
And it's a sports outlet to put this out too. It wasn't like whatever LGBTQ magazine that that you expect this type of stuff from.
Yeah. So it's just like this was just the most recent event that just I was aggravated when I saw it this morning. I think I sent it to Dre on Instagram and he was like, "Hey, let's put this in the show." It was literally what happened with that. But it was just, the most recent version of this. And what struck me as odd about it wasn't it wasn't that they even mentioned that it was religious. It was that they chose to pick a small subsection of what it, what constitutes that religion, and to call it anti LGBTQ, whatever letters. And it was just weird to me because of all the things they're pro, and for all the things they're anti, like that one little small smidgen garnered or was worthy of attention. And I guess I'm to a place that I don't understand what is or isn't worth calling out, because I mean, your FCA is essentially Christianity as a sports community, right? Christians are for a lot of things, and they're against a lot of things, right? It's also an anti-murder organization, if you want to think about it in those terms, right? It's an
They are not
anti
allies to serial killers. Okay.
absolutely, right? Like
So-
of all of the things that, and so I kind of see this as an attack on Christianity, and students, young Christians. But it's just kind of a weird thing. And it goes back to, I guess, back to the Chick-fil-A, you know, the canceling of Chick-fil-A, or the attempted canceling. Apparently chicken sandwiches are uncancelable. I think that's what we learned, is you can cancel a lot of things, but you can't cancel
you
chicken.
can't.
That's-
It's really
well,
good chicken.
That's the Lord's chicken.
Right.
That is. You can't.
He
cancel the
protects
Lord's
it,
chicken.
so you can't cancel it. It's also, it was oddly specific too. It's like they, they're anti-LGBTQ, and they're also anti-allies of them, and they're anti-gay marriage, which means that none of the people in those categories can hold leadership positions in the group. I thought that was a weird thing to call out. Like, so we don't like this group because they're religious and they won't let a subset of people be their leaders, therefore they must be anti those things.
Right.
They didn't say that those people can't be in the group or can't participate in the FSC, right?
Right. Or they can't come to the meetings. They can't,
Right.
they can't have some of the fellowship that's offered.
Right.
It's just, hey, there's just some specific rules here that you can't do. I would suspect you probably couldn't hold office if you were a teen, if you had teen pregnancy, right? If you were a pregnant, young, out of wedlock mother, you probably can't hold office. But they didn't seem to call that out. They're not anti-teen pregnancy, right?
BYU gets teased often because of their sex rules.
Mhm.
So
You have to
like,
sign
if
a
you're
contract.
yeah, if you have sex on campus, or get caught doing that, then you're not eligible to play. And there was one year, probably in the 2010s, maybe the 08 or something, where one of their star players happened to be a black dude, which not a lot of black dudes play at BYU, but he got caught doing the deed, and he missed part of the tournament.
Man,
It's like, at least they're consistent, and they didn't like, well, he's a star player, can't, which if it was like the SEC, that dude could probably get away with pretty much murder. Definitely not going to class or taking tests. So,
right.
not being eligible to play.
It's is that I've been seeing a lot on the like in some of the TikTok videos, whatever, where like the whole soaking is becoming like really been brought up because of BYU. And then like I read the comments and they're like, it's not a real thing, and they're like, bruh, it's absolutely a thing.
So
tell me you haven't gone to BYU without telling me you haven't gone to BYU, kind of thing.
yeah, they I mean, it's kind of funny that the steps they'll go around to not have sex but have sex.
Right.
It's just kids doing kid stuff.
Justifying and trying to, how much can we bend the rules without actually,
or you soak and then your buddy gets under the bed and bounces the mattress.
They shake the bed. That was the thing
I forgot what that's actually called, and someone in the comments tell me what it is.
Are you saying soak?
Soak, SOAK.
Soaking.
Yeah.
Do
ahead,
I,
Dre.
do I dare ask what that is?
You just
It's
I
I
It's
don't
it
wanna
in,
know.
but
I
you're
don't wanna
not.
know.
it's an approximation of intercourse, Brian.
Right.
That doesn't that does not compute.
You should
That
maybe
doesn't-
you should maybe Google it. It's probably not I don't know. I don't feel like
Is that
explain-
gonna? Yeah,
This is-
it's
this-
okay.
Not a very
I-
kid-friendly
I-
episode
I
already.
probably shouldn't have asked, but I had never heard of that. And
It also seems impossible.
yeah, I mean, it just seems
the-
like
of the-
if you're
Of the
doing
experience that I
that,
have in my life, sulking doesn't seem like it can be done.
and it seems like you're
Maybe I have no discipline. Maybe that's what that means.
like, who is that for? Like, what is the like? I don't understand how that satisfies the condition of.
it's no different than saying, you know, oral sex isn't sex, right? We had a president that tried to make that differentiation, right?
Yeah,
It's the same thing. It's
Or
like, hey,
other,
yeah, but you're
other
like,
pieces of sodomy isn't.
but is the institution going to care that you didn't
yeah, apparently that's I mean, I can't speak for the
like if
the BYU administration, but that seems to be the case.
if you're doing that, you're already like risking getting caught. It's not like, you know, they're gonna check or
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I
mean, I basically you get called into the dean's office and they're like, "We heard you were having premarital sex." No. I was just soaking, and they're like,
oh, all right.
I swear,
bad.
I just soaked. That's all. Was there
Hmm.
bed shaking? I can't confirm or deny, but I only soaked.
It's like that old Key and Peele when he used to thrust, and if you thrust too many times, you get a technical foul, or you get like a penalty. And the referee's like with the whistle like down at his crotch, like
Counting back seconds.
and then he's just like ever so slightly, he's like,
Yeah,
he thrusted. I saw the thrust.
I realize this is my fault, but
it is
it seems like we're off track.
a little bit.
Oh, get over it.
What are we talking about?
We were talking
Really?
about culture and I guess cancel culture to a certain degree, but you know, what it means for society and
What is cancel culture though? Before, I mean, people.
And
A
by
lot
the
of
way,
people that defend these things. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking of the people you've told me about who say that they listen to this podcast for their church. Like, so I'm just, you know, I don't want to be the prude in the group, but anyway, that's why I try to divert it back to the.
They talk about my mom. She doesn't care what we talk about. Like, what?
All
My
right.
mom. By the way, she sent me a text saying, "Hi guys," from our last episode when I mentioned her. And
Oh,
she's
yeah?
like, "Oh, tell the boys I said hello."
Mrs. Linda Bibbs, hello. How are you?
Yeah,
Hi, Dre's mom.
she gets kicked out. And she puts me on the big screen TV, so she watches. This is a TV show. This is hours of entertainment.
We are in her living room right
for
now.
Mrs. Bibbs. She's
I like it. I don't like the idea of my giant head on somebody's wall.
Maybe you ought to fix that. I don't know. Shrink your head. Like go see a head shrinker. Go to Louisiana or something. Figure that out.
It's not worth it.
Okay, very
to
well.
me. It's not that big of a deal. It's just I'm empathizing with them.
So a lot of people in our culture that defend cancel culture, what they said is it's not a real thing, and that it's just basically, hey, people are choosing with their dollars or choosing with who they want to see on social media, and that they're just holding people accountable for things that society doesn't like. So is there a distinction between accountability and cancel culture, scare quotes?
I don't know, because accountability implies personal accountability, right?
Mhm.
But I feel like the challenge or the kind of the inverse problem with cancel culture is there's no accountability to they, right? To the group think. So it seems as if a chunk of people, don't know what that majority minority number is, can decide they're going to cancel X, not Twitter, but X, Y, or Z. Or maybe they want to cancel.
I mean, X is in that category.
I guess
It's been in the
X
news
is trying to
recently.
be canceled. Maybe that was an appropriate Freudian slip. But there doesn't seem to be any accountability on the part of those canceling. So I think it's hard to answer that question just just yes or no. I think at some level, I'm sure the intent is about bringing social accountability, But I guess there's a follow-on question, and maybe we could address that question: is it even appropriate, or is it mob mentality, or is it something else? And I
Well,
asked that question. Let me just give a little bit of background. I've personally decided to not spend money with certain companies, and this goes back well before cancel culture. I'm going back to the 2000s. I personally won't buy Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and that goes back to, I want to say, like 06, 07. And I don't have to get into why. If anybody doesn't know, you could probably Google it. It wouldn't be that hard to figure out. So that's been one thing in the Morehouse. It's on the refrigerator. No Ben and Jerry's in my freezer. Um, Funny side story: Carrie one time bought some just recently, and I can't remember the circumstances, but I opened my freezer to find a box of Ben and Jerry's in there, and I took a picture and I sent it to Alyssa, my daughter, and I said, "Your mom has been unfaithful, and I'm not happy about this." Well, she was working at a hospital, and she didn't get the picture because she was using her Apple Watch, so she only got the words. And she, like, about an hour later, she's like, "I almost had a heart attack at work. I thought you guys were getting a divorce." I was like, "To be honest, it's not far from the truth."
Hey, hey,
But
there's a
so just,
line.
yeah, I
She
mean,
crossed it.
yeah,
and by the way, the picture of the Ben and Jerry's was as it was in the trash can. As I threw it away, I took the picture. Right. Um, anyway, Brian, I'm sorry, I cut you off. You started to ask something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I won't shop at Target now. Yeah, or and I canceled my Disney Plus subscription because they hate me
Yeah.
and they don't want my money. And I you guys know this about me. I love comic books. Grew up on them, never outgrew them. Won't read them now, won't buy them. They're all just woke garbage. It's just cancel culture is huge in corporate comics. But yeah, to your question, is it appropriate, or is it accountability, or is it cancel culture? It's I think we all kind of, the reason we hate it so much is that we all recognize there's a sort of insincerity to it. It's that they're trying to socially engineer their own standards into society. And it's they're trying to move the Overton window to farther left to favor their interests. And it occurs to me that this follows directly on our conversation last week about morality, whether it's subjective or objective. And it's interesting to me that there's a sort of, their tactic involved is to hold this out as if it that sports ball player ought to know better than to support Fellowship of Christian Athletes because they're homophobes, they're anti-LGBT, they're bad, everyone should know that, and that's why we're shaming him. They know full well that isn't the universal standard. There are still Christians. The majority of Christians will at least pay lip service to the Bible's teachings about homosexuality. They know this, but they just want it to be different. So it's kind of a cynical ploy. Tactically, they're acting as if there's an objective standard that everyone ought to know and is bound to obey. But there's a sinister motive there that by which they think they can change it. They can impose that change on collective morality by shaming people for not falling in line. And that's why they have to strain so hard. They have to find a logo on a guy's cleats to find a reason to complain about how they're being oppressed, because they can't find actual oppression and hate crimes against LGBTQ people to call attention to. So they have to contrive them to invent controversies like this. But yeah. So those are
The
my thoughts on
demand
it.
for oppression outweighs the supply.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
Or-
I think that's definitely true. What is that? What do we think drives that though? Is that like a deeper core issue that there's so much reward in being offended or outraged or oppressed?
Well, it's kind of it's the new religion. And the icons of the leftist religion are so people like Martin Luther King Jr. Who probably wouldn't approve of that, but everyone wants to see themselves as a civil rights activist. That's kind of the model for that's sainthood within their religion. And so
Yeah. We saw it a
it's-
lot during COVID, didn't we?
yeah. And it's they need a crusade to give their lives meaning. And
Yeah. I saw a comment, I think it was Tim Kennedy during COVID, and he was referencing or kind of pointing at the mask mafia, right? So there was people that were like crazy about masks being worn, and they would scream at people in public. And there's
Yeah.
countless videos on the internet of people getting into yelling matches and fights, right, over being masked or not being masked. And he pointed out that it was kind of interesting that his theory was, or his posit was, that people have found a way to think they're heroes without having to do anything dangerous or painful or hard. Right.
Yeah.
So basically he said that's what his theory is on all of these social justice warriors, is that, look at me, how brave I am. I'm an ally of the minority, and I'm going to make a big deal about it on the internet and cancel people. And then they pat themselves on the back and they go home and go to bed feeling like they've, changed the world. I think to your point, Brian, they see themselves as a modern day Martin Luther King, even though the things that MLK did relative to what these people are doing is laughable in comparison, right?
Yeah.
He put his life at risk for the entirety of his life, and then was killed.
And then was killed.
Right. Like
that's right.
it wasn't like he got away scot-free, but it wasn't like he didn't know he was at risk the whole time he was doing what he did. And we have countless others, not just him, but throughout history, of people that put themselves at risk, right? Who was the guy that translated the Bible into English for the first time?
Are you thinking of John Wycliffe?
Yes.
Or
I think
I always confuse him with Tyndale.
I think it was Wycliffe.
well-
Is it Wycliffe? Wycliffe? I think it was him, but whichever one of the ones it was, one of the two was the first one that had the testicular fortitude to translate the Bible into English against the will of the church. And he was
He was burned at the stake.
he was summarily, that's the word I was looking for. Thanks.
Yeah.
He was executed by the church for it, right? So there's real
So cancel culture in the church has been around for a little while.
longer than that, right? I mean,
Right.
I mean, wasn't the first cancel culture of the church the Nicaea, right? And I'm not saying it wasn't appropriate, by the way, but I mean, they had to cancel people. They were like, "Hey, this guy is a heretic, and you don't follow what he says."
To be accurate, I would say the Romans were the cancel culture. But
the point is it's been around for a very long time. It's not something new. I think social media is given it the ability for people to do it from the safety of their own living room. And I think
there is a weird self-serving aspect of it when you're signaling that you're virtuous and that don't come cancel me, or like in the recent Matt Rife cancellation where he has a joke about domestic violence. So if you look in like the comment section, a lot of the people that were angry, even though his following was basically built on women on TikTok, right? So he's a good looking dude. He has all this crowd interaction, and people dig it, and women love it. I mean, I took my wife, not because I wanted to just go check out Matt Rife. I took my wife. And when you go, everyone's couples. Like everyone at the place is couples. but the people that were saying stuff to him online were men,
hmm
right? They were all like, "Hey, I would never do that. I have a sister and a mother and a wife."
They're white knights.
That's right.
That's the term.
In his interview with Jordan Peterson,
That was so good.
when Peterson talks about the orangutans,
The monkeys, the gorillas,
the orangutans, that's what they were.
orangutans,
So
orangutans.
when you're an alpha orangutan, you become huge. You just grow, and you can't swing in trees anymore, and you have this big fat posit on your, and all the
Right.
women come to you.
What was his name?
Right.
King George.
The King Louis.
King Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be like you, man. Come. and the live action version's super creepy because it's Christopher Walken singing it. Yeah, you should check it out if you haven't. Just watch that scene.
Just for
Christopher
that,
Walken
right?
singing,
Well-
I want to be like you. Ooh, ooh.
What scene? What scene is that?
We're talking
Like-
about the Jungle Book.
Oh, okay.
And King Louis wants Mowgli to give him the secrets of fire so that he can be like man.
He wants
You,
to.
Alright.
you remember the Jungle Book? You didn't.
He wants to be
I
a
didn't
man,
see it.
cub.
I want to be like you. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
So-
Anyway,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So, but all the younger, not as big, not as alpha orangutans still swinging the trees,
Mhm.
right? So they're trying to get in where they fit in because the women all go to him. But
Right.
that's where all the rape culture happens in the orangutan world. So they're raping the females in the trees. So there's a lot of men out there that will get online or get on Tinder and act like they're allies to whatever feminist movement that you're doing, and all that's doing is to lure you to their bedroom. You think the sexual revolution of women talking about, yeah, I can do it just like men, like, you think men are angry at that?
right.
Yeah. They don't have to do all the things that it takes, traditionally for men to get in there like that. And then they get to tell you to go home and get an Uber, right? Because the woman's so pleased to do it. Like, I conquered him, I'm out. And they're like, oh no, I didn't want to play PlayStation by myself after you left. Ooh,
Yeah.
poor
No,
me. I'm
it
so
was-
feminist.
It was a tremendous interview between the two of them. Actually a great conversation. And throughout the whole thing, Peterson was really commending Matt on refusing to apologize, and even more importantly for doubling down with a joke on top of a joke. And he talked about how the crazy thing is when you do get into cancel culture and then you make an apology, then you get canceled for the apology. And we saw that happen with Bud Light, right? So Bud Light did the thing with the trans media person, and then they got canceled by the consumers, and then they stepped away immediately. They pivoted off of that and said we were never affiliated with Dylan Mulvaney, et cetera, et cetera. So then the LGBTQ community was pissed. Oh, so you just drop us at the drop of a hat whenever your sales drop a little bit. You're not really an ally. You're just here for the money. And so they got canceled by the gay community and got taken out of a bunch of gay nightclubs in Chicago specifically. And it's like, you can't win, right? And that's part of the problem. Going back to morality and standing on something, I think that's where so many people don't really know what they believe in. They just are kind of bouncing through the world trying to not offend people. And
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Like we speak a lot in terms of ideology, like how our cultural balkanization is ideologically driven.
Balkanization.
Balkanization, like we're fracturing.
Like the Balkans and FSSR. Okay,
right. Yeah, it's called balkanization when like a formerly united society kind of turns on itself and breaks into a bunch of little factions that are this degenerates into infighting. But yeah, that we talk about
English with Brian Irvin.
Sorry, I'll try to.
No, I love it. You learn something when you're here. Okay, so stay tuned.
Thanks, Trey.
Yeah,
I feel better about my overwrought vocabulary. Yeah, where was I? Ideology. Yeah, we talk about it as if it's ideologically driven. It's really not. in ideology, it would, strictly speaking, it's a system of ideas and beliefs, predicated on first principles and reasoned out, and you kind of build a worldview out of that. It's a self-consistent philosophy that it supposedly maps to reality in some way that can be articulated and reasoned and argued. Most people don't, I'm sure I've said this on here before, but like, humans aren't actually rational. We don't come by our beliefs by rational processes. We're conditioned into them. And then we use rationalization as a post hoc justification for attitudes that we've arrived at. So we don't really have ideologies, we have conditioned attitudes. And then the ideology is the license for it. Like, we speak of feminism, for example, as an ideology, and trans ideology and LGBTQ ideology, but they're really just a collection of attitudes that people have conditioned into them. But they haven't reasoned in doubt, and that's why they get mad when you challenge them on it. They have it modeled for them that standing up for these things is what constitutes virtue and heroism, and that's what they do to feel good about themselves. Everybody's moral compass is driven by the need for positive self-regard. We see these things modeled for us in TV shows and movies and other media. That's how we get our values, and then we kind of claim the ideology after the fact. And I don't mean that just about leftists. I think Christians do that too, at least as much as anybody else. I mean, I've 1,000 times I must have asked Christians before I was one, when they'd invite me to church, I'd ask, well, why do you guys believe this stuff? What's the, why should I believe this and, be part of your church? And they typically just kind of clutch their pearls and take offense that I asked. And typically the response,
it's so self-evident, Brian.
Yeah. Well, what, you don't believe this? I don't know. I don't know what I believe. To make the case for it. But it's virtuous in and of itself to believe these things. And so that, at least that's what's modeled for them. And so that's what they believe. But we've had a new religion kind of foisted upon us in the past 30, 40 years. And it's not something anybody's reasoned out. Well, some people have. But most people, it's just a conditioned attitude.
Yeah.
And that's what
I would say, with the exception of people like monks and nuns in a nunnery and those kinds of people, probably most people, I think, fall into exactly what you said, right? I don't remember who the philosopher was. It was Aristotle or Socrates or Plato, one of those three. I always kind of conflate the stories of those three because they were kind of one after another and with each other.
Right.
But there's the story of the guy, and he says, I want to know what it's like to I want to be a philosopher. And I think that I'm going to butcher the story. And the philosopher takes him out into the ocean and holds him underwater for 30 seconds. Then he pulls him up and he's like, what do you want? And he's like, I want air. And he goes, when you want knowledge as badly as you want air, that's when you become a philosopher. Something to that effect, right? That's how the story goes. But most people, that's not what they think about when they wake up. They don't think about that when they go to bed. And for the few people that do think about something that often, they're highly driven, right? Probably, some of the great inventors, some of the great businessmen, that's probably how they operate, although they're operating on, they're being driven by different values than those that we would consider to be virtuous.
Why would you say that?
Well, I'm just saying, I highly doubt that the average person is guided by a key set of principles that is what guides their every single decision, right?
I was asking about like why the
others are different.
Like, well, why they like why their value system would be something that we wouldn't consider
Oh,
virtuous. That's
well,
what I was asking about.
because I'm guessing that somebody like um, a Rockefeller or one of these massively successful businessmen that talk about how they wake up in the morning, that's all they think about. We would associate that level of success to be, driven largely by some version of greed rather
Mm.
than rather than trying to make the world better or help people, right? Like I think if you hold up a Mother
Yeah.
Teresa type person or some other, sainted type Christian individual and then look for a Gordon Gekko type individual, there's probably more of the Gordon Geckos than
Well,
people that are trying to make
yeah.
the world a better place, and that's what guides their every single thought.
I kind of think the Rockefellers of the world are. I think they probably do make the world a better place than the Mother Teresa's, to be honest with you.
I think they probably do, but that's a fortunate byproduct of their success. I don't think that's what they're thinking about when they get up.
Was that Elon Musk's point when he was when he gave the go fuck yourself
Well,
tirade, because people stopped at that part of the clip and didn't listen to what else he said in the interview.
Well, Musk is really consistent, right? So my favorite story about Elon Musk up until the recent
Right.
hey Bob, up until that, my favorite story of Elon Musk was actually he was asked by a college journalist who his favorite inventor was, and everybody assumed that his answer would be Nikolai Tesla, right? He named the company after Nikolai Tesla, and Tesla's, often regarded as this, uber genius and whatnot. And he said, no, that guy that everybody hates that quote unquote invented the light bulb, Thomas Edison, that's my guy. And they came back and they were just, what, and he was getting canceled back then over this before he was, the canceled guy. This is when he was still the, the darling of the left and the academics. And he said, look, here's why. And again, I'm these are broad strokes. I could try to find the article and link it so you guys can read the actual interview. But essentially what he said was, if Edison had not quote unquote stolen Tesla's tech, we might still not have light bulbs. While Nikolai might have been smarter in the straight line intelligence point of view, he wasn't doing anything to bring his inventions to the market, therefore bringing them to the people of the world.
Yeah.
Is that an argument for Bill Gates?
Well, that's why I think what Brian said is true, but I think it's indirect. I don't think for 1 second that Thomas Edison said, man, if Nikolai Tesla dies, we're going to lose all of his genius. I better go steal his tech and get really rich so that people have light bulbs. Like, I just don't think that's the way the thought process works. So that's my point.
I take issue with the like the Gordon Gekko stereotype of
Greed is good.
Successful people. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Gordon Gekko is a fictional character, and he was written basically to vilify people who
obviously
who make the world go around and
Yep.
give us all jobs and
well, we've talked about Ayn Rand on previous episodes,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's the same thing. People use Atlas Shrugged as both who not to be and who to be, right? Depends on who you're talking to. And
Yes.
that was, to me, that was evident in the book itself, right? The whole point of the story was these titans of industry are vilified by the have-nots, but they don't understand that they would have nothing if it wasn't for these individuals that made it their life's goal to leave their mark on the world. So yeah, I think that's why personally I've never been an Occupy Wall Street guy. I've never been an anti-rich guy, right? Like, I think that we need those people in the world. We need those things. We need what they do. We need the derivatives of that drive, because that is what makes specifically Western culture work.
Yeah.
And they actually tell you what you want, right? Like, nobody wanted an iPhone because why would I need an iPhone? I have a computer and I have a telephone.
Right.
Like, why would I need both at the same time? Until you get it, right? You never know what you want until it's given
Absolutely.
to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's another side. I mean, it might be a different conversation about how technology kind of cripples us and diminishes us, but I don't want to go. I don't want to get too off track, but I think Nikola Tesla is way overrated. I don't think he was actually that smart.
That's a hot take.
That's a pretty hot take.
He's from the future.
Oh, that's what.
Like
He was
now
didn't
the
invent-
take. Now you
he
got
didn't-
me.
He didn't
He-
invent any of that.
he was
just,
a dumb alcoholic from the future that just happened to bring a bunch of
He's-
his tech with us.
He's
with him.
he's
Yeah.
idiocracy.
yeah, he's like
Just an average dude that just new stuff.
He's Homer
Yeah, he was-
Simpson from
he was
3030.
he was just trying to get home. That's all he was trying to do.
funny.
But
You know, it's
Uh,
interesting that
and
we
you-
have these people that we talk about that are obsessed, but their through line, even though they're obsessed about different things, is the obsession, right? Like we talked about these people that just they're driven. You got a guy like Kobe Bryant, like, so what? It's basketball. Like what? But his
Yeah.
work ethic and how that translates to other facets of life. In fact, some of his best interviews are interviews not talking about basketball. It's talking
Yeah.
about things that he wants to get accomplished, or how he talks about it's not the product that is produced, but it's the journey that drives me. It's the waking up and doing the thing, and I know that I've done more than anybody else out there on the floor. And you got what was another example I was thinking of? Oh, like General Mattis. I happen to know that guy doesn't sleep ever, because
Right.
I was I was in Iraq with him, and I'd be up at 02, so would he, 06, so would he, 2300, so would he. I'm like, bro, do you sleep? And they say
So-
he doesn't, and he
so
just
did
reads.
you interact with him much?
Not much, but enough. I got to,
Mm.
I've
Did you get to
stood in the
touch
same
the hem of his?
place.
Did you get to touch the hem of his garment?
He struck me actually before. He punched me in my shoulder.
Nice.
He did it because I was smiling,
How are you alive?
right? He had to let up, right? He
That's
had to
probably why you had your stroke years later.
it might
Yeah.
he tried to kill me,
hit you.
actually.
He hit you with
He
Dim
did
Mak, and then it
So
it just
The
took
So
time.
he,
did mock.
he asked me, he said, Marine, why are you smiling? And I couldn't think of a good answer other than like,
I just love.
I'm having a
war,
good
General.
time in this combat zone. But my shift was almost over, and I was like, you know what? Because my shift's almost over. And I worked from midnight to noon, so this is about 11 o'clock in the afternoon, walking around, and General Matt's like, why are you smiling, Marine? So my shift's almost over. He's like, not for you, it's not. Who's in charge? I'm gonna go let him know that you're working a double, and I'm gonna be there with you, so we're gonna do it. You understand? And I was like,
Did you
no.
smile the whole time then?
Yeah, right. I was like, remember the Titans? It's not fun anymore, is it? Is it fun? No, football's not fun. So, and he punched me like, why are you smiling? I was like, oh, I'm like, little man, because
You're like, if you weren't, I would.
right. Yeah, he's as tall as his phone, and but it's weird because his presence is as big as my house, right? So
Right.
it's a weird thing, Mr. General Masso. I mean, I know he's listening, so.
Of course, Mad Dog is listening to our podcast.
What up, Chaos?
Yeah. But I want to circle back to your comments about greed, though, because I think it plays into the cancel culture thing. Like there's so much discussion on the left about we have to about greed being bad. We need policies against greed. It occurs to me that so much of their activism is concerned with policing the private internal attitudes of other people. Like they can't say anything that's actually wrong. And I'm not defending greed as a vice or as a character quality, but the fact that they hone in on that as a justification for wealth redistribution, like they've taken it upon themselves to presume authority over other people's internal disposition. Like, why is it a problem for you if somebody else is greedy? Or even like, why, like when we talk about racism, you ask them to define, racism is a problem. Okay, well, show me the problem. Show me how this is playing out. Oh, well, it's implicit bias. So it's the private internal attitudes of other people that you're talking about, but you can't point to anything they actually did in the world to show you that was actually racially motivated. You're just assuming that's there, and you're deciding to make that your cause. There it is. Yeah, so you talked about the difference between cancel culture and accountability. If of course, the pro cancel culture people will say, well, it's not cancel culture, it's accountability. That's
or
the
merely
line.
accountability, right?
Right. I guess that raises the question, well, to whom are we accountable? Why am I accountable to you? And what is it you're holding me accountable to? That's a question that needs to be answered. I mean, is it just
Things that are acceptable in society? Is it just a social construct of evolution?
And does that just answer it? Is that really binding though?
I'm thinking that's the answer, but is it adequate?
But hang on though, if that is the answer, shouldn't there be a majority vote on it or something? Like, shouldn't there be some kind of a town hall or an agreement? Because I certainly didn't agree to allow people to cancel based on X, Y, or Z, right?
Well, instead of just loud people on Twitter that that force large corporations to bow to them as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's inflated. I think people overestimate how much of society actually believes these things because of a loud minority of people on Twitter. I think the Bud Light thing showed that they don't own the culture. But to the accountability question about to whom or what are we accountable, it's I can't help but observe that, okay, if you're quote unquote homophobic today, boo, you get canceled. You have to apologize and convince people you're not a homophobe, and do your mea culpas and participate in your pride events so you can show how not a homophobe you are. 50 years ago, you get canceled if you're gay. It wasn't acceptable. They had to meet in secret. They were in the closet, as they say. So if morality, if these standards are just set by society collectively, so that you're a bad person if you're a quote unquote homophobe today, does it follow that if you were gay 50 years ago, you were a bad person? Because society said that was wrong back then. We never really had a discussion since then. We have a lot of claims that people make about the nature of homosexuality, and where quote unquote homophobia came from, but none of those things are actually true or hold up to scrutiny. But again, we never thought it through as a society. We were just conditioned into a different set of attitudes about homosexuality.
Right.
So our moral convictions related to homosexuality, at least today, it's no more meaningful than the drool of Pavlov's dogs. It's not, there's no substance to it. It's a conditioned response. But
so really what you're getting at is the linkage between the Overton window and subjective morality is what, that's what we're talking about, right? It's that whatever society says is okay is suddenly morally correct.
That's the basic assumption, but it's a very superficial and shallow view of morality, because it doesn't work. Because by that standard, well, if you were pro-homosexual 50 years ago, well, you were the bad person,
right? But
why can't it shift?
So link it to racism.
Well,
right, if you were racist in the late 1700s, early 1800s, you were a good person. And then now we're saying that you never actually were. Right. And is that even true? Like this is where the whole, moral relativism comes into play. So like, sexism was kind of sort of accepted and kind of expected to be a good thing. There's a great video of, shoot, I went blank on him. James Bond, the Scottish guy, Sean Connery being interviewed by Barbara Walters, talking about, sometimes you just have to. Of course,
I hit a woman.
You have to slap a woman around whenever she,
I don't hit women all the time, only when she deserves it.
And never with a closed fist, only with an open hand. Right?
Smack your mother, Trebek.
And at the end of that interview, Barbara Walters is like, well, when this thing gets aired, you're going to get some male. He goes, I'll probably get some female. Right. Like he was uncancelable in that moment. Yeah. Right. Like he just didn't care. He was like, lady, trust me, I'll be fine after this interview. You know who I am. Right. But, the average person would be horrified upon hearing that interview. And they would say, the rule of thumb, right? Like we have that saying, for those that don't know, the rule of thumb was you could beat your wife with a stick no thicker than the thickness of your thumb. That's what the rule of thumb means. Look it up if you've never heard that before. So like whipping your wife was acceptable enough at a point in time that they had rules about it. They had laws for when you could and couldn't and how you could do it. You could, like, I think in some states you had to take her to the steps of the courthouse to whip her, but then you could beat your wife as long as it was in public view.
So you're saying that you're pointing out how the morality around that has changed, or our perception of the morality has changed.
Yeah. So, and it really kind of, to me, it clouds the conversation of the concept of objective morality, right? Because at the end of the day, there has to be a standard, right, that everybody's leaning to and looking towards. And in a previous podcast, we debated whether or not that was God, or the Bible, God's word, if that was really the ultimate giver of morality, right?
That was not the debate. The debate was not whether the Bible is the ultimate source of morality. The debate was whether God is the ultimate source of morality.
That's why I clarified as I said it. I said the Bible, and then I said because it's the word of God. I was trying to loosely link those two together. I wasn't trying to split hairs on that. But so the question is, I guess, I don't know about saying the question is, but I guess it poses a question of, is the morality of a group only relative to the belief system of that group? And is there anything that just is? And I think in that last conversation, we kind of did a loop around with the concept of mathematics and the science of math versus the language of math, and that can be a social construct. But the reality of 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't care about what we think about 2 + 2 equaling. It will still equal 4.
And do we have the, I don't want to say the right, for lack of a better term, to deem those people immoral because we see them through a different lens today?
I mean, it depends on, I think yes and no. I mean, I think it's
an immoral act or an immoral person.
Well,
and are they distinct?
I don't know what that means. I don't even know what that means in a practical sense. I mean, I can look at Thomas Jefferson and evaluate his behavior and decide I don't want to act like that. Not only because it's illegal to own people, but if I did own people, hypothetically, hopefully I wouldn't rape them and father children on them and then abandon them. But I
like that you said hopefully.
Which part? What did I qualify that with? I don't remember saying.
You said hopefully I wouldn't rape them and father children and then abandon them.
Well,
I'm kidding. That was just a funny
phrasing. But I that does raise the interesting point, is that I'm not in that position. I will, in my entire life, I have never known what it's like to be tempted to, like, I've never been in a position of temptation where I owned people, where I could impose my will on
Right.
them without
So-
resistance, and they would have nothing they could do about it. And so if there's a attractive slave in my household and I would like to have sex with her, what's to stop me? I would
Right.
hope that my own moral character would stop me. I have no, I think that would be
I get it.
extremely,
It's impossible to
and
know
arrogant.
100%
Right.
because we can't put ourselves in
Like-
that position.
Like all the
Right.
badasses that think they'll do this and that when the bullets start flying.
Mhm.
And then, you know, some
Which-
of them,
which
you're
goes back-
surprised at the people who
Yeah.
duck, and you're surprised at the people that charge the hill, right?
Mhm.
which kind of circles back to the homosexuality thing and how our views on that have changed. We look to society as the whatever society collectively deems acceptable, that's our standard of morality. If that's what you think, and if that's your reason for being pro LGBTQ, and you haven't thought it through, and you can't give rational, correct reasons for why reality is a certain way, and base that attitude that you have on on reality where you can show your work. If you had lived in 1930s and 40s Germany, you probably would have been a Nazi. You would have been as anti-Jewish as anybody else, because you are the product of conditioning, and that's as deep as it goes for you. And so if morality means anything at all, it has to be more than just whatever society deems acceptable at the time. Or it evaporates. You're not talking about anything of substance. And so all of our moral indignation over this immorality or that, it's a joke. It's a farce.
So I don't disagree with what you're saying. And I think your point about the 1930s Germany is really valid, right? I think it's hilarious for all these people to act as if, I'm so anti-Nazi. Yeah, right. You're only anti-Nazi now because it's cool and safe and it's easy to do it. So here's a question based on that same thing. And now we're down a whole different rabbit hole. Kind of tying the two things together, talking about cancel culture, societal change, morality, hearkening back to the last episode. We, those that are more conservative minded, see progressive people as, pushing us off the hill of the reason and culture and, civilized society. Are conservatives virtuous for holding on to the past level of normalcy because it was appropriate? Or do we simply hold on to past normalcy because it's comfortable and we don't want to change?
Yes, all of the above.
Right.
I mean,
I think there needs to be a balance, because that's what personality is, and that's what humanity is. And if you have the right balance, then you can progress in ways that are healthy. And you can, I think all three of us here, if presented with enough evidence that we should change our mind on any topic, I think we would. So I think a progressive mind, in a space of total conservatism, if they present a good enough argument that maybe we should shift a little bit, then I think we should. And I think that, we have. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And as far as being virtuous on those things, I think I'm like, how principled are you? And are you doing things out of those, out of that principled nature, or you just kind of going with what suits you because it's more comfortable for you?
Yeah, and I think, it varies from individual to individual. I think of my own development of my own political philosophy. My first job out of college was as a political reporter covering the Oklahoma State Capitol. so I'm sitting in committee meetings watching these issues get debated between Republicans and Democrats like all day, and then going back and writing about it in the evening. And so my views changed a lot because I heard all the arguments for any given topic from both sides. But I can, when I started, I was basically like your garden variety George W. Bush voting Republican. But I couldn't have told you why, other than just broad stroke stuff like because I'm a Christian and because of abortion, and I didn't believe in communism. But yeah, I don't think most people have kind of rationally built up their worldview from the ground up. And that's really something the church should be impressing upon people, should be actively teaching people as initiation. I mean, we call it apologetics, but in the early church, what we call apologetics was so essential and integral to basic Christianity. They didn't have a word for it. It was just evangelism. It was just teaching. But if we had that, we'd be living in a different civilization, a much better and more enlightened one.
So I mean, even in different facets of life, if you're handed things easily without that foundation, then it's easy to lose it or crumble or change your mind about it because you haven't invested in it in any kind of way. It's why it's funny because we always talk about generational wealth, but yet the Forbes list changes every single time one comes out because the Rockefeller's children are not nearly as driven, innovative, what have you, and they squander the money.
Yeah.
So if you have a belief or a worldview and it's just handed to you from your parents without the foundation and without you doing work or getting deep inside yourself and to study, then your worldview is shallow and light, what Brian's been saying, and then it can be shattered at any moment, which I think is why a lot of these people, when challenged on their worldview with just a simple question, like, "Hey, what do you believe?" Like, "Well, you're clearly a transphobe because you asked me what a woman is." Well, I mean, if that's what shatters your worldview, then you don't have a strong enough foundation in what it is that you believe.
Right.
And
I
it
don't
shows
disagree at
in sports, it shows in money, it shows in family, it shows in discipline of your children. It shows
if your response to a challenge to your worldview is the rhetorical equivalent of an angry monkey hurling feces, you're not a respectable human being. You're not. I wouldn't even say you're not a grown up. You're not a respectable human being. Stop doing that, people. Learn why you believe what you believe. But
not a hot take, but a strong take.
Right. Yeah. No, it's funny that thing about you're saying about the Forbes list, Ray. I read it was a Forbes article, and it was talking about startup companies, family companies, and that when a company started, they have like a 50% small business success rate. But of companies that do succeed, when they pass it on to the next generation of children, it has like a 75% failure rate. Because
that's right.
Exactly like you said, the kids don't have the same passion that their parents had to continue to operate the family business and to run it. Dad did it because he loved plumbing or whatever, right?
Right.
Like general contracting. But the kid grew up and was like, "Man, I want to go be a drummer in a rock band.
Right.
I don't want to be a plumber." And his dad's like, "Shut up, you're gonna plumb," and right. So he plumbs and he's pissed off. And as soon as the old man retires and is out of the picture, he just kind of half-asses it, and the company falls apart.
I only go to church because grandma made me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and this applies in two big ways to our society as a whole. One, when I was a kid, Christians just presumed the cultural right of way in all things. Like if you ask them why they believe this, it was the pearl clutching and the what you don't, and they thought in terms of America being a Christian country, and so it's just sort of taken for granted that Christians should get their way in things. We don't have to fight for it. We don't have to argue it on its merits. It's just the right thing to do. So that was assumed, and that's why we kind of lost our cultural ascendancy, because we didn't make the argument. Now the opponents of Christianity are assuming that cultural right of way.
Just lazy.
But also, like, to that, that Plemmers kid who just wants to be a drummer, we have the people today they think that our way of life is just the default setting of human existence. Like, they just take it for granted. They don't give any thought to what it took to get us here and what it still takes. Like, there's that Just Stop Oil group in Europe. You guys seen these guys?
Yeah.
I mean, the name alone is just stop. Just cut it out. Just stop the oil. That's you're
Just don't do it anymore.
Yeah, just stop oil. Just stop oil. That's what the name of their group is. And they go and they throw soup on paintings and glue themselves inside museums.
Were those idiot kids that almost got decapitated because they went into that I guess that
chicken coop or whatever, duck?
Yeah, the farmers.
No, I think those were like PETA or vegans or something.
I think those were vegan. They were vegan people.
Vegan.
Vegan. They were PETA vegans.
But stopping oil would, like, that's as idiotic as communism. Like,
I think it's worse.
I mean, it's part of the same continuum of just dumb thinking that you don't know how anything in the world works, so you think the infantile utopia you have in your head where everything runs on renewable energy and nobody has to work because rich people pay for it all and you're all government house pets. It's the same level of thoughtlessness. I mean, and these aren't people who have thought through anything. These are conditioned attitudes and they're pawns of other people. But yeah, anyway, so
yeah. How you can die from hypothermia within minutes, but if you found some shade and drank some water, you could probably live in heat for a long time. So global warming is really not that bad of a thing. Like, more people die from cold than they do from hot, by far.
Everyone should read Alex Epstein's The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels.
Yeah, maybe so. I did Michael Schellenberger's Apocalypse Never. That's a good one.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, I have opinions on this.
Okay,
but we should save it for our when we talk about progressivism. Well, a lot of leftist activism that expresses itself in cancel culture, it's concerned with policing other people's private internal attitudes.
Right.
Like, it's not anything they actually do, but they decide that.
Right.
Like, your quality of character is for me to assume authority over and control.
Yeah, and it's
go
ahead.
It's weird that I've never cared if someone was racist. Like, I don't care as long as it doesn't affect things, or you won't allow me to do something because of my race, or but like if you don't like me because of the color of my skin, I really don't care. I'm not trying to marry you. I'm not trying to. But once you start acting on those feelings, or assault me due to only that, well, now we have a problem.
Well, I think you'd care if you were assaulted regardless, right? If it was,
well,
if somebody walk up and just punches you in the face,
as long as this guy doesn't dislike black people, it's cool,
right?
Do you give a shit what color pants the son of a bitch who shot you was wearing?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like the whole idea of a hate crime. I hear people talk about that, and we live in a stupid society that we have things like hate crimes.
Well, it's funny because when people talk about hate, not hate crimes, but hate speech, right? Like I've said this before, in America, hate speech is specifically one of the things that's protected by the First Amendment. Right?
I would go even farther and say that in America, hate speech doesn't exist.
Well, that's what I mean. And I mean that by saying that's why it's protected by the
Yeah.
First Amendment. Like the First Amendment exists for two reasons. One, to allow citizens to speak about the government any way they feel appropriate. What in the hell just happened? Why did
That's
that
just you,
happen?
dog.
I don't know.
What the fuck kind of AI shit is going on in my...
I was
Maybe
hoping I'd
that's
get a
our-
racist thumb, but
Maybe that's our live viewers giving,
Oh, boy,
giving
here we
us
go.
giving us likes.
No, it was just...
Yeah, I saw it. We all saw it.
Yeah, we
You're
saw
not
it.
imagining.
There it is.
It's coming. It's just, I must have a setting enabled that allows that to happen. That was... That threw me the fuck off. I was like, what the...
It turned into that in.
It turned to a Disney cartoon, like, you know, like when they were having like anyway. What I was saying is First Amendment exists, one, to allow citizens to talk about the government, and two, to allow citizens to talk about one another, because words can't hurt, right? Like sticks and stones, blah, blah, blah. So no, I'm with you, Brian. I don't believe in the concept of hate speech. Like whatever people call it is just people's feelings being hurt. And I don't care about your feelings being hurt. Like, I just don't care. It's funny.
I do care about hurting people's feelings. I don't want to do it.
No, I don't mean me. I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, if I do something, if I hurt your feelings or Dre's feelings or my wife's feelings, or, you know, somebody that I care about, if I hurt your feelings by something I say, I'm going to care about that. But if some random person got their feelings hurt because some other random person said something, like, shut up. Like,
and the thing is, but I mean, I think we all have a basic reflex of, like, if somebody's offended by something we did, like, you know, we you know, on reflex, we apologize. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I didn't mean any offense by that. The problem today is that the left has weaponized that.
Yeah.
They've weaponized common decency and decorum against people to get their way. How dare you not call me ma'am?
Your words are, what's the phrase? Your words are literal violence.
Yeah.
It's literally violence. It's literally a hate crime.
You're someone that's never been punched in the face.
Right.
If you say that, you've never been punched in the face, and you need to be. It's good for you. And
I also hate what we've done with literally. Everything else I said, I take back. Misusing the word literally, that's hate speech.
It's objectively bad.
It's objectively evil. It is.
That is hate speech.
Stop ruining language. But
no, but you know, it's funny, Dre, you made the comment about not caring about the idea of racism just as an abstract thing. And I think it's a similar, one of the things I've since probably you remember this as long as you've known me, is I'm immune to somebody assuming or thinking that I'm racist with anything that I say or do. Right. I know who I am internally. I know I come from a biracial, mixed family, of my grandmother being Japanese, and, you know, my dad's family are certainly not white. Doesn't make them black, but makes them not white. And I don't have racist thoughts or motivations, and yet I've had people say, "Oh, you're racist for saying that or thinking that," and my response is, you know, it's not, and you're wrong, and I don't really care, and I'm immune. And then they're always confused. They're like, "Wait, what do you mean you're not bothered by the fact that I just called you a racist?" And I'm like, "No, because I know I'm not, and you're an idiot, so go away."
I do get bothered by that, but you know what I do? I typically get called this in the midst of a political discussion, like based on my views on immigration, that we should have a border and not just let everybody in, or anything, or if I don't think George Floyd was a saint, and Derek Chauvin was a cold-blooded racist murderer, and somebody tells me I'm a racist, my immediate response is to say, well, you're a pedophile.
Mm.
And then they're like, well, how dare you? What are you talking? Why am I a pedophile? I have exactly as much evidence that you are a pedophile that you have that I'm a racist. So if you call me a racist if you want, but you're a pedophile.
You really need to try being a self-loathing black man.
I'm sure that's got to be the worst.
It's fun.
It's got to be.
fun.
It's got to be super annoying.
And my favorite is like when white women tell me that I am.
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
Did you see that recent clip of Candace Owen and there's a white guy telling her about how bad it is to be black, and she was like, I love that there's a white man telling me about how I should feel as a black woman. She's like, what you don't know is there's a bunch of black people behind you rolling their eyes at you right now. and she's like, why don't you just sit down and shut up? And then the crowd goes nuts cheering for her. It's really funny. But yeah, it's got to be just beyond frustrating.
Yeah, it's tough.
I mean, imagine, I think the only thing that might be worse is being, what is it, a Blue Lodge Republican? Is that what they're called?
A Blue Lodge.
I think it's Blue Lodge or Lodge Cabin Republican.
Or a log cabin Republican.
Log cabin Republican.
A gay Republican.
Yeah. That's got to be. And
imagine that's got to be tough.
And imagine being a black log cabin Republican. That's got to be the worst.
What's his name? Rob Smith. He's a podcaster, political commentator. He worked for Fox for a little while. I don't know if he still is there, but I think that's the name of his podcast. Rob Smith is a problem. He's gay, right? And he's black.
Yeah. And he's conservative.
And he's conservative. So that just warps people's mind. Like, what?
Yeah.
He's our Don Lemon.
They start buffering.
Right. Or the Jew gay guy, Dave Rubin.
I don't know.
Conservative.
I don't know him.
Yeah, he was he's a Young Turks defector.
Okay.
Got a podcast now. He's in conservative circles.
I don't know if there's an answer. I don't know if there's a resolution or a happy ending for all of this, right? It's crazy that it just seems to be getting worse and worse and more. There's more and more of it. I remember my son came home one day, and I don't remember the conversation. It was a few years ago. It was back when he was still going to school in person, which was before COVID. So it's been a minute. And whatever it was, I said something, and the kid said to me, well, you're racist. That's racist. And I said, excuse me.
Wait, who said that to you?
My son. And while I said I don't care what other people say, obviously I care what my son thinks. But what bothered me was I know he'd been programmed by something. Yeah. I said, oh boy, have a seat. We're going to have us a conversation, like 3 hours later, like I stopped whatever I was doing and we had to sit down and talk it through. And it wasn't about me browbeating him. It was like, hey, so tell me how, tell me why, tell me what, tell me who, tell me when, right? Like, and I just kept asking until he realized he didn't have an answer. It was just like, whoa, when people say anything that's remotely related to this space, you're supposed to just say that's racist and not talk about it. And I was like, oh no, that's not how this works. And it was fine. But he also came home from school one day telling me that, communism is a vastly superior political system. And this is, guys, you got to understand, this is what a kid in Moore, Oklahoma.
This is in Moore, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right. So I expect this where I live.
So if that's what a kid in Moore, Oklahoma is being told at school, like what is it like in Massachusetts and California and, Illinois and the more blue states? And that same conversation, I was like, oh boy. And that was a dinner conversation. And that one took a while. And that one took days because because also, for those that don't know, my son is a huge World War II historian kid. He's that guy. He's already picked that path. As a man, right? He's going to be that the war buff guy.
Right.
And so, he had a lot of opinions on previous countries, and he plays this World War simulation game where you pick the country and then you pick its political system and then you play the risk-based, like a risk type game. And he loves that, and he plays it all the time. It's like Victoria something, or I don't remember what it's called. So he's into this stuff, and it took like a week of us having this conversation before he finally kind of came through it. Now, my son, true to being raised in my house, at a different point in time, slipped this to our friend Jake. But the difference was he did it to troll Jake. He had already decided that this wasn't what he believed. Carrie and I were out of town, and Jake had taken Austin to see Midway.
Yeah.
And I'm getting texts from Jake. What is up with your kid? And I'm like, what do you mean? What's wrong with him? And I think something's wrong because I'm in Hawaii. And I'm like, what's wrong with my son? He's like, Jake was being dramatic, and he's like, he freaking Marxist, this and that. And I just start cracking up laughing. I already know what he's doing. So I text my son. I was like, if you're trolling Jake right now actively, keep going, because he's texting me. And so like we're like we're tag teaming Jake on this deal. And it was like a month later.
I can see Jake responding to this in my head. Like,
he's an animated individual for sure.
He wears all of his feelings on his sleeve, right?
Right.
So
he's got buttons. They're all like big blinking red, begging you to push them.
Yep. So Jake, I know Jake
on a hair trigger,
and I know Jake will see this show. But Jake, that was all Austin doing that, man. It had to be done. It might come as a surprise. He's your son. It might come as a surprise that I've raised a couple of troll children. I don't know.
Maybe so.
So I'll bet the listeners are on the edges of their seats wondering, what the hell does any of this have to do with the Divine Council world?
I bet they are. In fact, I'm wondering the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let me ask this. I mean, churches engage in disfellowships and excommunications and all the things, depending on what church you go to. Those all have different meanings and levels of what they mean. Should Christians, and I have some thoughts on this, but I want to get yours, both of you. Should Christians engage in what we're defining as cancel culture? And if they should, why? And if not, why? Why not?
I think the short answer is yes.
They should be engaged in cancel culture?
Well, to the extent that what does that mean? Right? Like, okay. What does cancel culture mean? If we're putting a pejorative tag on it, then no. If we're going to say that cancel culture is simply a social group using its stated morals or values as a way to guide the behavior of the group, then yes. Right? So I guess we'd have to back up and define the phrase to say, what do we mean when we say it? But I mean, within a church community, within a Christian community, they do cancel certain behaviors, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s, right? There was certainly a cancel culture around that. Was it appropriate? No. Was it well intended? Yes. Right. I think that one specifically, and we were all kind of that era, right? Was more about, there was a bunch of parents that didn't understand what in the bloody hell their kids were doing. And so rather than really understand what role-playing games were,
right. And you see the writing on the wall, right? Where this could go, not necessarily where it is going.
Wizardry and demons and dragons and what? No, absolutely not. My child will not participate in this, right? Like that was the smart, safe, I say smart. It was the safe response. Having been that kid and knowing that, there was no risk of me becoming a demon worshiper through this, I don't necessarily think it was the right play, but I understand as an adult why that behavior happened the way that it did. Right. So that's just one like pop culture example of it. But that's my first response. Brian, what do you think?
I think yes and no. I mean, as far as should churches uphold their own standards? Of course, any group has to do that to stay a group. But I'm trying to think of the best way into this subject, relating it to the Divine Council worldview, to kind of review what the Divine Council worldview is. the world is under the domination of malevolent evil forces, of malevolent spiritual forces. Malevolent and evil is redundant, but
There's really bad.
yeah, Paul talks about the spiritual forces of darkness in the heavenly realms, the gods of the divine council, or call them demons, if you will. They rule over the nations. The point of the Great Commission is for the church to advance upon the world and take the nations back to loyalty to the one true God. So we are at war with these spiritual forces of darkness in the heavenly realms. Paul talks about how the whole world is under the power of the prince of the power of the air, meaning the devil. And I think that's what we're seeing in cancel culture. Like critical theory, as is the academic term for most of it, it is literally satanic. And if you look at what it is, critical theory, it's essentially just Marxism, that but instead of it's defined as a criticism of power structures, is the dry sounding kind of academic description of it. But it basically just divides the world up into oppressed and oppressor class. They take out bourgeoisie and proletariat and insert in white supremacists versus black people. Feminism does it with men versus women. The patriarchy is the bourgeoisie in this case, and women are the proletariat. And it does this with everything, and it frames everything in these terms. And it essentially boils down to an accusation of oppression. Like it's a hammer that they put in people's hands, and they send them out to go look for nails. They're told that the world is run by white supremacists. Their sense of positive self-regard is predicated on being a crusader in this struggle against the white supremacists. That's why the demand for hate crimes exceeds the actual supply, and they have to invent them. Everything is, all of the oppression that you read, the hoax hate crime that you keep hearing about, these things have to be contrived to maintain the narrative, but it really only serves to divide people and make people hate each other. And it programs these attitudes where our very sense of virtue is predicated on playing out this narrative, and it is infiltrating the church. We should do another podcast about progressive Christianity, because it kind of ties into this. But if it exploits the fact that people aren't rational, that we don't build our worldviews from first principles, from the ground up.
But it's called critical theory. Does that imply critical thinking?
Yeah, if only. But I mean, the other, another major role of the church and of Christianity, it sees fallen humanity as enslaved to our base natures. We're basically the language of being bestial and like animals is used a lot in the New Testament. Peter talks about these false teachers and the people who follow them, who are creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed. And Paul talks about how their God is their stomach. They serve only their appetites. And of course, the Antichrist is described as the beast. So the picture it paints of fallen humanity is that we're basically enslaved to our animal nature, and the whole point of salvation is to receive a new nature, to become fully human, fully in the image of God, which means mastering our appetites, self-mastery is one of the qualities of the divine nature that is listed in 2 Peter, that we're to strive to add to our faith. But the point of all that, Christian discipleship should be about training you in how to transcend your animal nature and become fully human. Initiation into Christianity should be learning why Christianity is true and building that foundation in reason and evidence, and then building your worldview from that foundation. A true Christian discipleship should be about learning how to discipline the mind as well as the body and the emotions, so that you're not susceptible to this kind of brainwashing, so that you're not running on conditioning. And if you have built your worldview from the ground up using reason and evidence, you're largely inoculated against that kind of conditioning. And I think the current political climate is I think it's the enemies making war upon us and exploiting the fact that the church has failed to do that. And as long as we continue to fail to do that, we're going to be subject to these forces.
Jay,
Yeah,
Jay, what were your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, and maybe we didn't parse out the distinctions between accountability and cancel culture. I think we touched on many of the features.
We didn't get,
but we didn't, we didn't flesh that out. And I think the church version of cancel culture, I think, is accountability vice canceling someone else. I think when it extends to whether or not someone intends to do something, I think a lot of the especially critical theory, and if you intend to hurt somebody, then you did, and if you accidentally hurt somebody, then you accidentally did. An apology should be good enough. I think that the cancel culture versus like church accountability is that I think a major distinction is there's no road to redemption. There's none, right?
I see what you're getting at. I see
where most of the time, if you get canceled, you could get canceled for a tweet you sent 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people's experiences with church are different and have stuff that's different, but usually if you get disfellowshipped or excommunicated, unless you did something super egregious like rape or murder, something like that, and
there's a path back.
Yes, reports of rape happen in congregations more often than they get covered up. I know that's a big thing where churches cover up rape, but most of the things that I've heard of in churches that I've been involved with, like, they've been excommunicated over things like rape. And I just want to get that out there. But usually it's something that's been going on for a long time, and they've been counseled and they've been warned. The pastor's like, hey, check it out. If you keep, conducting this behavior, you're going to end up disfellowshipped. And I think another feature that's different is, though that person could become a pariah in the congregation, your wife can still have lunch with his wife, right? So the association oftentimes is also different, where that wife doesn't have to virtue signal like, hey, my husband did this thing and he's been, disfellowshipped from this congregation, but I'm still faithful, I'm still married to him, so I'm faithful to him still, but I can still go to church, I can still partake in all the things, where in cancel culture that's not necessarily true. So I think the road to redemption and the bubble that it casts around. We just talked about Matt and I on the phone earlier today, talked about the Danny Masterson situation, the actor formerly of That 70s Show and Netflix The Ranch. So they were basically teenagers when they were doing that show, and you got guys like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis that were friends with him. So they were asked to give a character statement at his trial, which they did, but then they got attacked completely because now people are saying, hey, you're pro-rape. Well, that's not true. Their statement was, hey, we don't know that guy.
Right.
We know our brother Danny, and he's hilarious, and he was our friend. In fact, Ashton Kutcher was the producer of The Ranch, and and he fired him, right? I don't know if it was under immense pressure or not, but he's like, hey, love you, bro. Hope everything works out for you, but you got to go. You can't be on this show. And then they hired Dax Shepard to take his place. So I think, but in review, the road to redemption, where the church will lay out a path for you to be able to come back into the fold, where I think if you get canceled on Twitter, the inclining is to apologize immediately, and it never works ever. In fact, they find fault in your apology and how you didn't do it right.
Right. Back to that thing we're talking about.
You didn't bow down. You didn't kowtow to whatever. Therefore, now you are extra canceled. I don't even know what that is, but the church gives you a road back, and I think that the Bible gives you a road back.
Well, the important part is God gives us a road back, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. When, as you said that, like, I think when you asked the question up front, I was thinking about canceling activities or canceling things, right? Like, so the example that I use with, Dungeons and Dragons, I wasn't suggesting that individual people should have been canceled by the church. I was suggesting that they were canceling that area of activity. And I think, to clarify my point, after you said your bit, I agree with that I don't think churches should cancel people. I think canceling individuals is dangerous. I think it's dangerous, not just in a church context, but in a social context. For all the reasons you just said, right? That
when has a modern American church, even though they disfellowship or excommunicate, whatever term that they use, when have they tried to destroy their life? When have they demanded they've been fired? When have they tried to say, hey, your livelihood should go away?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you're like, I don't know, an OnlyFans or a prostitute, they're probably like, hey, they don't advocate for it. But
but they don't go out of their way to block you from earning a living either, right?
Exactly.
They don't say, hey, we want to have your website shut down, we want to have your accounts frozen. It's more of, hey, what you're doing is, we find it to be reprehensible and outside of the way that a person should earn their living. But
therefore, you can't be in this space.
While you can't do that and this at the same time.
If you ever complete all of that stuff that we don't want you here for, then you're welcome to come back.
Look at
where cancel culture is like, I want you gone.
Right.
I want you dead. I want you to not have money ever again.
And with churches, it's not even really punishment. It's more like, if you're engaging in these behaviors, or if you hold these beliefs, we're not on the same page with us. Like, that's not, it's not even get out, you're not unworthy. It's more like, why would you come? Why would you want to be in this group?
So yeah, I'm with you on that, Brian. But I think it's also important that a church, this is Matt's opinion, right? You guys might have a different opinion, but there is no behavior or lifestyle or way of thinking that should cause a church to tell a person they're not welcome in the church, unless they're actually being aggressively violent to the people in the church. Not being a deacon, or not being a prayer group leader, or a children's, educator, is different than saying you're not welcome to come sit in the pew and take in the service, right? I think that's kind of where that stupid meme about, Jesus sat with prostitutes and murderers, and when I do it at Thanksgiving, I'm making it awkward. Like, that's a little bit of an overplayed joke. The point is that who needs the church more than people that are broken and doing all of these things that are
in fact,
unholy, right?
In my experience, the people who have been excommunicated to whatever church I belong to at the time were there on Sunday. Now, we weren't supposed to talk to them or whatever, but they were there putting in their work.
Well, and the whole not talking to him is a little, that's close to canceling, right? It's like,
it is.
They don't get their road back if you cut them out of the fellowship portion of it, because that's supposed to be a part of what the church is. So I think it's a fine line. And I think,
I agree.
And obviously, if they abuse,
different offenses get different sentences.
Right. Don't get me wrong. If a dude abuses a child while they're at church camp, you probably shouldn't have him in my church anymore. Right. Like, that's,
he should probably, get destroyed.
Right.
So
yeah. So
he shouldn't be on my planet anymore.
So there's, so there are limits to that also. I'm not suggesting that, it doesn't matter, there's no rules, but like, whatever the other thing.
I believe in accountability.
Yeah, I mean, so like use
no
the
doubt.
OnlyFans, right? So find, let's say there's a young woman and she's at a church, and it comes up that, she's the, the wife of the youth minister, right? And then everybody finds out she's running an OnlyFans. Well, that's going to be problematic.
All the
But
teenage kids have,
there's going to be
subscriptions.
some massive problems, right? And maybe the deacons do.
Right.
But like you can't. In that kind of a situation, I don't feel like not talking to the young lady is the way to fix that, right? It's more of, if she has the guts to show back up, then that's, to your point, Dre, like you got to figure out that path back. And by the way, it's not for the humans in the room to say, her salvation is or isn't at risk. And that's the thing that problem I have with excommunication. Right. Like not being Catholic, but I understand the way I understand excommunication is that the church is revoking the Holy Spirit and salvation from that person. And I find that to be laughable.
As if they have the power to do that.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
In Catholicism, they withhold being excommunicated from the church means you're denied mass.
Right. Which means confession.
Right, and you have to have
last
they believe
rites.
you have to have the communion in order to have the life of Christ in you. And it's like I don't, I'm not Catholic. I don't share their beliefs about what communion is.
Right.
But as far as it sounds, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's like, what you're saying about the hypothetical OnlyFans content creator who's married to the youth pastor and going to the church. It sounds like you're presupposing she wants a path back.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, but what if she's defiant? What if she says,
even if she is,
do this,
that's fair.
I'm making money. I'm empowered in my sexuality and or whatever nonsense she says.
Even if she was defiant or what's the word I'm looking for? Non-repentant, or didn't feel like it was a bad thing, I would still suggest that allowing her access to the church broadly is still the right thing, because how is she ever going to change without the the attention and the love and all of those things?
I don't know, but I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't know that banning her from the premises would be my first resort as the pastor or an elder. But if that's the situation and she's taking part in fellowship and she's socializing with everyone and she's still doing this and she's unapologetic, there does come a point where it's not your problem anymore whether she's gonna change. That's up to her. That's between her and God.
Agreed.
But your job,
especially if she's a danger to the congregation.
Right.
Well, and I maybe picked a bad hypothetical.
Yeah, and you're, but it's applicable
No, it's
to
good.
other sins though. But like there comes a point where if you let that person continue along, you normalize it.
That's true.
That's true. Act like that's just normal for Christians,
unless you address it on a regular basis amongst the constituency.
Yeah, and I would, but if I were the pastor of that church and this became an issue and she refused to listen to me, she refused to listen to other people, she just kept going. And I do think this is a major problem in churches where we have such a low view of what the Christian life is supposed to be that we do normalize a lot of sins we have this general apathy.
I think we normalize all sin.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking. Right. And it's a tough one. I mean, hey, look, there's a reason. Well, there's a couple of reasons why I'm not out running a church. This would be chief among them, right? Like I'm uninterested in the social problems that come with trying to make a church operate in today's world.
But this also exposes a fact, an ugly fact about Christendom itself, and it ties back into the cancel culture thing. It really is it's an industry. Religion is an industry, and it's a consumer's market. Meaning if there's a demand for a certain
Type of church. That's the
type
church.
of church, the marketplace is going to supply, and whatever the greatest demand is, that's going to set the standard. We have this idea that the church as we know it, well, that's by God's design. God is shaping it and guiding it. God wouldn't let it go astray. It doesn't say that in the Bible anywhere. In fact, it constantly warns against false prophets and false teachers. And Peter, in 2 Peter, he talks about just as there are false prophets among the people, so there will be false teachers among you, and who will secretly introduce destructive heresies. And it says the Greek word is they will emporiosante you with logoi plastoi, which literally means they will make a business out of you with plastic words. And I think most English translations have it as they will exploit you with stories they've made up. But the point is, we're seeing that play out. We're seeing that church is big business, and if you don't tell people what they want to hear, they'll go to someone who will. And if you harsh their buzz by coming down on their sin, they'll take their business elsewhere, and they'll go find a Jesus that's more accommodating to them. And
I'm going to Vegas.
Yeah, and that's and that does make churches somewhat susceptible to cancel culture. I think it was some actor, or I think it was didn't they try to cancel Tim Tebow a few years ago because he went to a quote unquote homophobic church.
Yep.
And I think it might have been somebody else, but I remember watching Matt Lauer interview him. That I'm dating this because this is back before Matt Lauer got canceled. He kind of had that coming though. That was the correct use of cancel culture, I think. Sorry, my pet lion's doing something over there. You don't need to hear about it. It's awful. She caught a gazelle. It's ugly. But but Matt Lauer was interviewing whoever it was, and he just asked him, "Are you a homophobe?" And the guy was falling all over him. "No, I'm not a homophobe." And that question, that tactic just makes my blood boil.
Well, it's just like they did it to the CEO of Chick-fil-A, right? When all that was going on, they did that to him. They did it to the Duck Dynasty guys.
And they do the same thing with, are you a transphobe or are you an Islamophobe? Like if the suggestion is like, it's kind of a mind trick. And this kind of ties back to our occult podcast where I talked about how language is used to kind of create reality. We have this language that we control people with it, with terms like, transphobe or homophobe, the implication being, well, only an unhinged lunatic with mental baggage would have any problem with a grown man with hairy knuckles and a square jaw putting on a mini skirt and lipstick and a wig and sashaying around with an effeminate affect. If you find that off-putting, well, it's because you have mental issues. It's because you're the weirdo. And it's like they just kind of rig it that way so that it's to head off any discussion of the actual ideas on their merits. It's just a foregone conclusion that all like stable, normal people are just full-throated, enthusiastically celebrate transgenderism or any of the alphabet.
Okay, cool. So
anybody in the alphabet group.
So, some writer for like The Atlantic listens to this show, this episode, and here's Brian's last 1 minute of what he said.
Oh, we're getting canceled.
Right. Well, no, he wants to get you on the record, Brian. Are you a homophobe?
I reject the
what's-
premise of the question. That's the correct answer.
Okay, very well, and that's what I was getting at. Like, what? How?
Yeah.
How?
And I'm the same
if you're
way.
if you're a guy who's asked, if you're unlucky enough to be the the guy on the street that gets a iPhone in your face and get asked these questions, or you have, I don't know, these guys they set up traps and like, do I look like a boy or a girl? Like,
Yeah.
why are you asking me,
that
man?
recent one was crazy.
Homeboy's
when
just
he-
trying to make pizza. You know what I'm
when
saying?
he's-
Like, and then asked and answered.
Right.
Why are you trying to police my brain?
My response to that is, I'm not playing along. I'm not in your cult. Your rules don't apply to me. I am not accountable to you. Go away, or
Right.
stay here, eat some pizza, and be normal. But we're not doing this. You're not going to impose you're not going to go around imposing your will on me. So,
Yeah.
and now
it's
do your worst.
Well, and that's the problem is, from my perspective, is somehow, somewhere, society decided that confrontational lunacy is an acceptable social interaction. Right? Like that's the part that's weird to me. It's so far beyond tolerance or acceptance, because there's a difference between tolerance and acceptance. But Brian made the comment about the Overton window earlier, and for anybody that doesn't know what that means, it's some philosopher named Overton, and essentially it's the window of what's acceptable within society, right? And they talk about it sliding left to right, and things that were within the Overton window in the 1950s, it slid to the left, it slid to the left. It's continuing to slide, and it seems like it's accelerating. But my point is, or my issue is, groups, these fringe groups, we'll just say that, make it easy for conversation, because it's not just the LGBTQ, it's racial minorities, religious minorities, whatever.
Vegans, fucking vegans,
CrossFitters.
Right.
They say they want
climate
tolerance.
alarmists.
They want acceptance, right? They want us to they want tolerance. But what they really want is domination of the social discussion. That's my take on it, right? Because that individual going into this pizzeria and saying, "Do I look like a boy or a girl to you?" And for those who haven't seen the video, the pizza guy just goes, "You look like a man. Pretty sure you're a man, dude."
and he can't stop laughing.
And the person is highly offended. They're in a dress, they're wearing makeup. Sounds, voice is clearly that of a biological male.
It's just a dude with long hair,
right? And he says, "Well, how could that be? I got long hair, I got a dress on. Why would you think I'm a guy?" And the guy's like, "I don't know, but you are." And so the conversation just continues, and then this individual sits there and chastises the pizza maker, and the guy's like, "Bro, I make $12 an hour. Like, go away." Like, it's essentially what the guy's saying. But it's sad that anybody thinks that just doing that makes sense. Like, imagine going into somebody's job and just accosting them with some absurd question, and then just hovering and sitting and doubling down on their response. Because
do I look like a 49ers fan or a Rams fan?
Right? Like, who cares?
I don't actually care.
Yeah, I don't know you. I won't know you the minute you walk away from me. Just go away. Right. And that's the part that's weird. And Brian was saying, he refuses to accept the question. Like, I had vision of Jabba the Hutt laughing at Luke, your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me, kind of thing, right? like that's I think would be the right answer to deal with people of any fringe ideology, right? That wants to force an ideology on you. It's like, well, why would you think that I care about what you do in your free time or what goes on in your head? Like, I don't know you. I certainly don't care about you. And the minute you stop speaking and walk away, I'll never think about you again.
Right.
Well, because the crusade is the point, though.
Right. But it's back to what I said earlier about
we see it in sports.
They get to be a hero, right?
Right.
And they're safe because they're now in the protected class.
Guys wouldn't wear the jersey on the night, right? So it's one thing to tolerate, but now you got to accept. And now we got to take it a step further, and you must participate in our celebration.
Except the one team that didn't
Wins the
Super Bowl.
World Series.
Or the World Series.
It
Yeah.
was the Texas
Yeah.
Rangers.
Yeah, Brian, I don't know if you're aware of this, Brian, but every team in Major League Baseball played along with what did they call it, Dre? Was it just
It's Pride Night?
Pride Night.
Pride
And,
Night.
and
I heard
every
that.
team did it except the Texas Rangers, and the Texas Rangers won the World Series this year.
And they say there's no God. Take that,
What?
Megan Rapinoe.
One might call that one might call that based.
Right.
That's pretty awesome. But
yeah.
It's kind of like it's. I remember asking BLM supporters back before that fell out of fashion. Like, what do you
fell
want?
out of fashion? Are you saying Black Lives no longer matter, Brian?
Here we go.
But like when you ask them, like, well, what do you want?
No.
Like, what is it? If you like, let's just say I agree with everything you're arguing, and you get your, like, we give you like a blank check to carry out all of your policies. What is that going to look like? What's the world look like? What policies are going to change?
Define
systems get
success, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah,
if you're in a negotiation, you have to have an idea of what it is you want. What does a
Yeah.
successful end to this negotiation look like?
And it was always just these kind of vague, undefined, unfalsifiable. Well, I want to end racism. Okay, well, you're not going to do that. But okay, you have to define it. So what is it? And it's always undefinable. It's always it's they're hunting ghosts. It's always private internal attitudes that they're taking aim at. And it becomes obvious that the activism is the point. It's not, there is no end objective. There's no success that would satisfy them, because they need something to push back against. That's what critical theory is. It's a hammer. You have to go looking for nails of oppression to hammer in. And it's the same thing with the trans people.
When the only tool you have is a hammer, everything's
I
a nail,
think
right?
I think the same thing with the Republican Party. Right?
so?
They're constant losers, right? They don't actually want to fix anything. Everyone knows that we're in a big uniparty, but yet they still fundraise on the idea that the evil left they've infiltrated every single institution in America. They own the schools, they own Hollywood, they own all the things that influence you, and only our policies can make that no longer happen. Well, we had years and years where they owned the Supreme Court, the House, the executive branch, the Senate. You have them all, and nothing changes. Yet the moment that Donald Trump loses in 2020, we're back on that kick. We're just perpetual losers. And I mean, I've even been proposed to go be a loser. Like I was going to run for Congress once upon a time in 2018. And I was told, hey, you might, you're not our Republican. You're not for us. But you know what you can do? You can go run up in Los Angeles and oppose Maxine Waters, the established Democrat in that area. But knowing damn well I'm going to lose. So they're like, but we have a token Black man, and we can fundraise off that, and you can keep the proceeds. We can just keep this rolling along.
This message brought by Andre Bibbs.
Right. And I did it accept the message? I endorse this message?
You approve this message?
I approve the message. I blame this
or brought by friends of Andre. The super PAC.
Yeah, if we ever if Vivek Ramaswamy ever comes into office and he dismantles the federal government, your little thumbs up thing came up. If say we also get a federal ban on abortion passed, and basically every Republicans won't have anything to campaign on. They need
perpetual victimhood, the same as the left.
both sides need a boogeyman.
That's right.
they need a dragon out there to offer to go slay, or they don't have anything to offer. And that's kind of a problem.
It's demonic, is what it
Well,
is.
that's where the whole uniparty thing comes in, right? Like,
Right.
it's essentially, at least the way I understand the uniparty, is the belief that the two parties are actually colluding behind closed doors to ensure that nothing of real substance ever really happens, so that they both have a reason to exist.
And to be fair and accurate, the system is set up so that the government's not actually supposed to do much, but we have it. But we're kind of doing it in the wrong direction. Like, it's the Democrats.
It's too late. Like, it's too big to fail, right?
Well, yeah, and we're so addicted to it. We're all a bunch of house pets. Like, when you talk about libertarianism and going back to like the constitutional blueprint of the government, everybody gets mad though. What are you going to do with my Social Security?
My roads,
liquidate it.
All
We're
these
gonna.
All these people are going to lose jobs.
Yeah, if we get rid of the IRS, that's going to wipe out accountancy. But it's I'm pissed off all the time just thinking about it. Just how much of our paycheck they steal so they can maintain this this do nothing. Well, it's not even a do nothing bureaucracy, but it's most of the federal agencies shouldn't exist. But anyway, this is kind of different.
Yeah, we're down
we're
a
off topic.
political road.
I love that we started on cancel culture and we're ending on taxation is theft. This message is approved by Matt Moore.
I don't believe that taxation is theft on principle.
Okay, well then,
there
it is.
Just so my views aren't out there getting distorted. So if we're ever big enough that Media Matters pays attention to us, I want them to get me right on this. I think taxation is legitimate under the just compensation clause. If the government is doing what it's supposed to be doing, you're getting a return on that that's of equal or greater value than what you paid into it. Taxation is theft the way they do it now, because it's often done for purposes of redistribution. Like, people have this idea that one of the reasons for taxation is so people don't get too rich. I've heard leftists and academia say that, which is they're basically pro-slavery. That's all that is. They're just if you think that the government is supposed to tax rich people so they can redistribute it to poor people in the form of government programs, you essentially believe in slavery. That's what communism is, or socialism, or anything where you don't actually have the right to personal property except at the government's permission. Well, you're pro theft. That's
or when you're compelled to give service and not be compensated appropriately on the backside of it, right?
Yeah. They're basically deciding that they own the fruit of your labor. And it's
this is the third time we've made an Ayn Rand circle back.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the religious ones.
Saint Anne.
Saint Anne the atheist.
But hey, we just saint her after she's dead, like we're the LDS.
Yeah, we baptized her while she was dead.
We converted her, and she's converted and sainted.
And now she knows in her disembodied spirit in heaven.
I disavow
that she is now sainted.
You're just pushing all my buttons, man. You're just
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
They're
so
big.
have we wrapped this up?
I think so. I think we're probably at the natural end.
I think we solved cancel culture, guys.
We did it.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different than some of our other shows. Huh? It was a little different flow and different conversation, yet much the same.
Yeah, nobody got mad.
Well, yeah, we're gonna save that for next week. I mean, we'll pick a topic that we hate each other on, and then
I don't know.
Well-
Brian said he didn't think that taxation was theft. So like
Yeah, I think that might-
I'm simmering deep
we
inside,
might
but I'm
we might
I'm holding it
start on
back.
that.
Well,
We as of this recording, we are at 93 subscribers. So
we get to 100. Come on, baby.
Let's get to 100 and
Push the button. It don't cost you anything.
That's
Just push
right.
it.
That's just on YouTube. On our our Spotify and Apple, we have more. But this is fun, and we're gonna be here next week for sure. So please, if you like what you heard or what you watched, hey, leave a comment, leave a review if you're over on Apple or Spotify, and
If you didn't like, leave a review, leave a comment. Our new one of our frequent flyers in the comments section. Appreciate all that feedback on last week's episode. Also, I made a quick response to one of your statements. You had a longer one I didn't get a chance to reply to yet, but I will a little bit later. It was actually addressed to Brian. So Brian, you need to take a look at it. But
okay.
he basically agreed with me, so you won't like the comment, but
yeah, and that's why Matt loves it. It's like, hey, this guy's great. Keep following and keep commenting.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of wrong people out there.
but not this guy.
Right, this guy's
All right.
great.
He's
All right,
based.
I've been baited successfully.
Nice.
I'll check it out.
So stay enlightened, stay curious, and we will catch you next week. God bless.
See you guys.
Bye bye.